Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of The Sword of the Lictor by Gene Wolfe. This is the third book in the Book of the New Sun series. I've been plowing through it ever since the first one, The Shadow of the Torturer, was the book of the month for the month of June. I'm on a roll. I want to power through this series, and we finished the third book, so we're well on the way to achieving that goal. I will say, just as a quick overview of my thoughts about the book, by far, this was my favorite of the series. I think it kind of had the best elements of both of the first books, kind of like the atmosphere and tone of the first book that I liked, with kind of like the mystery and like the expanding upon these characters in the second book. Those things in general, I feel like I'm settling into this world a little bit more, settling into like the way that Gene Wolfe writes and the way that he conveys ideas. I feel like I'm settling into that a little bit more. Or maybe it's just a little bit more straightforward. We get some reveals in this book, some explanations of past mysteries, and it's really starting to pick up steam, and I'm really starting to come to appreciate this series in its entirety rather than just being on a wild ride of confusion and mystery. But there's a lot of things I liked about this book. Overall, I felt like this one had a bit of a clearer narrative than maybe the other two, because obviously the first book starts with like the introduction of Severian and the Guild of the Torturers, and then like the Thekla drama, and then ends with like his journey to Thrax, right? His exile into Thrax. The second book was his journey to Thrax, but he gets like sidetracked basically at every step of the way. So we start in Thrax. We start with a clear goal. He's the torturer there. He's the executor there, and he's doing his job. And from there, he doesn't kill who he's supposed to kill, has to escape, has to flee, and gets into some more hijinks, right? But overall, I just feel like I understood where we were going more. His actions and the things that he encountered made more sense in context, I felt like, this time. And overall, just a lot easier to follow in terms of like the events. And not that the events were always super complicated themselves. It's more like the explanation and the meaning of why they were happening, like the author's deeper intent, which I feel like was a little bit confusing on other stuff. And there's a little bit of that for sure, but overall, I feel like I just understood the journey more, if that makes sense, in this one. And it's all still very rich in meaning, though. Some of the highlights, just the conversations he had with his target in Thrax, the fake Pellerine, who he was trying to pawn off the Claw to get more information to find them and give them back the Claw. That conversation was... A lot of it went over my head still. As a very, like, you could tell as she was saying things very important and very vague. I couldn't quite puzzle a lot of it out, but I did enjoy it nonetheless. And then the whole arc where he encounters young Severian, the younger boy with that shares a name with him, when they're on a journey together, like the metaphor with that is very deep. But again, like all this stuff I'm saying is very deep. I'm still not to the point where like I 100%, oh, this represents this and this represents this. I'm just like being able to note things that would make more sense on a reread, because I still think that this series demands further inspection, demands just a pass through first, just to get the general events and plot and the general structure of the series, which I think I'm getting more of a grasp on. And then the second read, or maybe even a third read, is where you really get into like the literary analysis of like, this represents this in his journey, this represents that, metaphors. I'm not to the point where I could parse all that out, but I am getting to the point, like I said, where I understand like more of the broad stroke stuff, which is my goal of this first read. I'm not trying to understand everything. I'm not trying to be a philosopher here, just trying to kind of parse that through there. But Young Severian, I thought that was a very interesting arc, and I could just smell that deeper meaning there, and I know it's there in the metaphor with that, and how poor young Severian ends up. Very sad. And then obviously the climax of this book where he meets Baldanders again, and that whole reveal of like what that character is. I'm sure there was more hints of like the secret. I mean, I will say this. My instincts were very good meeting Baldanders and the Doctor. Even from the first book, they reminded me of, in Malazan, Botchelane and Corbel Broach, that duo, like they're like clearly sinister but kind of a dark sense of humor. They're evil, but they're not like direct antagonists. I got that vibe with them from the jump. But I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're not villains. Maybe they're just some weirdos in this world. And I did pick up in book 2, they hinted a lot about Dr. Talos and Baldander's relationship, that even though the Doctor seemed to be in charge of the relationship, there seemed to be like some kind of strange relationship where maybe the dynamic wasn't as we seemed. That is confirmed in this book. So I had the sense of that. I didn't give it a super amount of thought, but that reveal where it's like the Doctor was created by Baldanders to take care of him, it wasn't a huge like twist to me, huge surprise, but the fact that he was like this powerful being and super evil, and all of a sudden he's like very like, okay, like time to be destroyed. I don't really understand what he is and why he was like a creature that never stops growing. I kind of missed some of that nuance there. But the heel turn of their relationship and that fight at the end was very enjoyable. I think I could find out more about why that happened. I'm not entirely sure why it's that way, but it doesn't surprise me. It fits the vibe. It fits the character. What they were doing traveling and pretending to be a theater troupe, I don't know. Was it a plan? Were they looking for Severian the whole time? Were they just cross journeys? But it's very clear to me that like Baldanders and Severian are like rivals of some kind, and there's a line where like Baldander's like, I should have killed you like when we first met, so that he didn't know that they were rivals or that they would come to this climax and fight together. And then there's these weird, I forget what they're even called, the weird people that were in Baldander's castle, and they're like very vague and like they're like not human, they're like humanoid, but they're like otherworldly vibe. They speak very vague and they speak like in riddles, but it's just like it's like almost like they don't experience our universe or this universe the same way as the other characters. I didn't really understand that either, but it's very clear that these are two very important characters and that they favor Severian. I got that vibe. And then obviously the fight, Terminus S is destroyed, the awesome sword, and then the claw is shattered and its core is revealed. Very symbolic stuff that's happening there, I'm sure, but it just left Severian in an interesting place, that climax there. And I don't know if Baldander's will come back. It's kind of hinted that maybe he didn't die, like that they thought he did. But it's interesting, and I want to know more about those people that were at the creatures, I guess. I forget. I wish I could remember what they're called, but the ones that were in the castle, they were speaking vaguely, and they were like kind of like praising Severian in a way. It was weird. And then the things that I liked in general, I think Severian's growth in this book felt more pronounced. He kind of has this growth with the claw, and like where he decides to accept like the burden of it, because his whole thing is like, I got to give it away, I got to give it back. Ever since Votilis, the second book, was like, listen, you got to return it. Like, this is like, I don't want it. This is a powerful relic. I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want people to take the wrong message from me having this religious, powerful, miracle-causing relic. So Severian's like, okay, I'm going to return it. But then he kind of like accepts like the burden of like, I could use it to help people. Like there's that great scene in Thrax where he heals like the little girl and heals like his brother, or the little girl's brother rather. And like, he kind of goes around and he tries to save the family, and then the attack with the Alzabo and stuff. And then even like trying to bring, like the guilt of like not trying to bring Thekla back, but then he tries to bring young Severian back and it doesn't work. So like, he's trying to use it as a force for good. He kind of turns away from, I should return it to people who've used it for good, where like maybe I am supposed to be that beacon of help, of providing it. And I don't know, I can't really tell yet if it's just like his own ego taking over there, or if he really truly has a desire to be this force for good, or he's kind of getting like the power of like, I have the power of the conciliator in my hand, and I should be the one to use it. I can't really tell where that's going yet, but in this battle between Baldanders and Severian, it's very clear that Severian is the victor. So where that goes from there, we'll see. The other things I liked, we do answer some questions from the earlier books. Like, I was really confused, or I guess I wasn't really confused. I kind of just chose not to think about it, like where Dorcas came from in the first book. Like, he was traveling with Aegea, and they were on the boat, and then all of a sudden like Dorcas was there, and she's like, I'm your best friend, and it's like, okay, whatever. And I just like accepted her being there for the rest of the books, but it's revealed like where she came from, and the claw actually resurrected her corpse, and like that whole reveal there. And that was a great character conflict with her, where she's like, well, I don't belong here, I don't belong being alive, and like nobody I know or are the people that I knew when I was alive still alive? Like, I'm not, even though I love you and I want to be with you, Severian, like I gotta find like my people, because like I shouldn't be here right now. So that was like a great character moment and a great character reveal, kind of explaining some of the oddities that happened in an earlier book, that for them to be explained now is very refreshing to me, to have finally something that I understand. And so I know, like when I reread the first book, Dorcas comes alive, I'm like, boom, I know what happened there. I know why she came alive. And that's a great feeling, to get some of those mysteries revealed. And also just the character of Aegea in general, just being like a recurring like a recurring assassin in Severian's journey. Like, he goes to a random building and she's there in the cupboard. She's waiting to kill him. I think it's a great recurring bit. Listen, I'm gonna be honest. I hope they make up. Right? She's got a lot of trauma there, and they got an intense relationship. But you know what? I think she'll come around. And I like that scene, and just like that scene in general with the Alzabo attacking the family and the kind of creepiness of that monster. I feel like that was one of the few times, and it kind of treads the line of like kind of this gothic vibe, but this is kind of like led into like the gothic or even like Lovecraftian horror almost. Maybe not Lovecraftian, it wasn't really as alien as that, but like this creature that like has the voices of its victims and like comes to the door and is speaking in like the father's voice, and then the sister that went missing's voice. And that also kind of explained the mystery of like in book 2 with Thekla and like her corpse, and like when he ate her flesh, like he got her voice. It's because he like drank the juice or something of the Alzabo, or the blood of the Alzabo or something. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but now knowing it's this monster who could kind of consume the personalities or the voice and like some of the likeness of like the people it controls, and it kind of uses them to like lure in its prey. That makes more sense that if you drink its blood or something, or consume its liquids, that if you eat the flesh of somebody, you can again gain their memories. And it's kind of a Dune moment as well now with Severian and Thekla, where like there's moments, and I just started the 4th book as well, and early on in the 4th book they do this as well, where it's her memories are seeping into Severian's memories, so he very quickly switches from like, oh, when I was younger as Thekla, versus instead of like, oh, well, I remember Thekla does this, it's they're kind of merging into one memory bank. Not that he has moments where she comes out of him, but like he can kind of draw on her past experiences as well. It kind of keeps her with him, which I think is an interesting dynamic, similar to Dune, where like you can like call on your ancestors' memories and have them talk to you and give you advice and stuff like that. It was reminiscent of that for me, but overall, still a lot of mystery to uncover. Still a lot of like good nuggets of just deep metaphors there that I'd like to parse through one day. But overall, I feel like I'm settling into this world. I'm really enjoying it. And like I said, it was my favorite of the series so far. I'm really excited to read Citadel. And then I also have from the library, The Earth of the New Sun, kind of like the wrap up of that series. So excited to plow through those and see where we go from there. But this has really been a diamond in the rough series for me. I really didn't expect to be reading this series. It wasn't really even on my radar. So thanks again to Jarl Trippin for recommending it as the book of the month. Because it really, like, I'd heard of it, but honestly, like, a lot of like the fantasy series that like, there's a lot of fantasy series that I get recommended that I don't even think about. Like I feel like Book of the New Sun, every time I heard it, I thought of like the Lycanus trilogy for some reason. I don't know if I forget what the books in those series are, but I feel like there's something also to do with like similar titles. So I really just have like a pot of fantasy series where I just don't think about it. I just heard the names a lot. And then like the Rage of Dragons series, like that's another one which is like, I heard them, not really looking into them. I just throw them in the generic fantasy. But this is really a unique series, this Book of the New Sun, or I guess I assumed it was like more modern fantasy. I don't really know what it was about at all. But really dive into the series blind. It's just really interesting, older fantasy. And I just think the way that authors wrote back then, I don't know, it's more rare these days. It's very experimental. It's very deep, very metaphorical. But you know what? I'm enjoying every step of the way. So can't wait to continue this series. Let me know if you guys are reading the series along with me, or I know some of you have read the series. Obviously, you're cheering me along in this journey, which I do appreciate. And I know that Sword of Lictor is a popular one, and I'm excited to keep it going. So be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like in the future. I'm having a grand old time. July's off to a great start, and thanks for sticking around.